You're listening to Brave Girls with Tracy Imm, where we choose to empower you to be a better leader, mentor, and coach in the world. We'll share stories of people who have achieved great heights by overcoming adversity and rising to the challenge, all while pursuing their passions. These courageous people will inspire you to have faith in yourself and take bold action. Right here with the host of Brave Girls, Tracy Imm.
Episode 2, No One is Coming to Rescue You, with Mary Lou Kayser. Tracy Imm here. I'm really excited to share episode 2 of the Brave Girl podcast with you, where I chat with my good friend, Mary Lou Kayser from the Pacific Northwest. We talk about navigating the river of life and what she learned when she was a whitewater rafting guide in Alaska. She dropped some incredible gems in our conversation about mindset that I'm sure you will absolutely love. On this episode, we talk about Mary Lou's leap of faith into entrepreneurship after a very successful post-secondary teaching career. She's now modeling to her children how to live a life that matters by working smart and learning from her failures. Mary Lou's gifts as a writer, editor, teach, and coach are now being shared with the thought leaders all around the world. She helps them take their ideas out of their head and put it onto a page. We talk about the resistance you face when you're an entrepreneur or a writer and how to overcome fear, doubt, and worry. She shares the impact that her coaches have had on her and why you need to invest in yourself in order to grow and develop professionally. In addition to her business consulting practice, Mary Lou has a vibrant podcast called Play Your Position, where she interviews people pursuing leadership excellence. She's recorded over 150 interviews that you'll want to check out. I invite you to listen in as Mary Lou shares with me what happened when she found herself stranded on a gravel bar all alone and she has a God moment. She shares 3 vital lessons that she believes she learned that day that apply to life and still inspire and motivate her today. I hope you enjoy this episode of Brave Girls with Tracy Imm as much as I did creating it. We cover a lot of ground in our conversation and you don't want to miss a beat. So today on Brave Girls with Tracy Imm, we have with us one of my really good friends, Mary Lou Kayser, from outside the Portland area, and she's with thebookrevolution.com. So good afternoon, Mary Lou.
Hey, Tracy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So just so our audience knows a little bit about you, you've had quite the journey, and you are quite the brave girl throughout your journey from what I know. And I've known you for several years now, and at one point had been working with you on book writing. And I know that that is definitely a passion of yours as you are out in the world. So why don't you give us a little bit of a background on who Mary Lou is?
Oh, wow. Well, that is a big question. Who is Mary Lou? Well, Mary Lou, first of all, Tracy, I love, like you said, one of my passions in life is writing and books and teaching, and everything I've done has somehow come back to those 3 things. And currently I am running a business called thebookrevolution.com, where I work with thought leaders who have been walking around with a mental model or intellectual property for years, some kind of framework or some perspective on leadership, and they just need help getting it out of their head onto the page. And reverse in time, my journey started in the state of New York. I ended up on the West Coast for college. Then I went to Alaska and worked as a whitewater rafting guide for a while. You and I were talking about that in the pre-chat. Then I got a real job, air quote, real job right after college, which lasted 3 months, and I was fired from it. And that firing was one of the best things that could have happened to me because it sent me right to graduate school, where I got my master's in teaching and launched a very successful secondary and post-secondary career until the mid-2000s, when I probably took the biggest leap of faith and left the golden handcuffs behind and launched the first iteration of several businesses I've had between then and now. And have been on my own, building and scrambling and hustling and all the things that we do to have a life that matters, model for my two children that it's possible to follow your dreams, and you don't necessarily have to, work your fingers to the bone to make that happen, but you do have to work smart, and there's going to be sacrifices and also some failures along the way. So here we are in 2018. I love working with the clients that I work with. And then again, something else you talked about, I have a podcast called Play Your Position, which you are a MVP of back in the day, and you're going to be a future MVP the second time around when your new book comes out. So that in a nutshell is who Mary Lou is.
Right. So, your podcast is great. Play Your Position. I love that. I love the sports analogies that you use. I love the guests that you have. So, just for our listeners, if they haven't tuned into Mary Lou's podcast, go check it out. She's got some of the great guests that are on there talking about their journeys, talking about some of the lessons that they've learned. And I really enjoy your podcast, Mary Lou. So thanks for putting that out to the world. And I know that you said that you're almost to 150, episode number 150, which is huge, having just launched it in 2014. I mean, congrats. Because I know there's not a lot of us out there, female podcasters. But, as creatives, I think we want to put our work out into the world. And I think, you're kind of my kindred spirit in that you love storytelling, you love being a creative, you love teaching writing, you love writing and editing. And I love that you're an Oregon Ducks rabid fan. So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I've always loved sports. I grew up in a home where the women were the bigger sports fans, believe it or not. Both my paternal and maternal grandmothers, my mother, were huge fans of baseball, basketball, March Madness, football, hockey, all of it. And so I just grew up in homes where sports were on. And it wasn't until I want to say 2007, I started dating my husband. He's a graduate of the University of Oregon. My daughter is about to graduate from the University of Oregon Honors College. By the time this episode airs, she will just be getting ready to don the cap and gown. So I've got ducks in my family, and I went to a small college. I did not get the big school experience the way kids who go to a state school like the U of O or, University of Michigan or UCLA, one of these big schools. For you, Navy, right? You're
right.
A big Navy fan. So there's just all the pomp and circumstance around big programs. I didn't have that experience. So as an adult, to experience my first Duck game at Autzen Stadium, I was immediately, I thought, where has this been all my life? The first game I actually went to happened to be ESPN Game Day. So Herbie and all those guys were there in Eugene outside. I was walking around, the energy, the electricity in the air. It's hard for people who aren't big sports fans, and I know that some people aren't. I guess I liken it to, I think everybody has something that makes the electricity just hum through their body. Maybe it's going to a rock concert or hear their favorite country artist. It's that when you're in a stadium and this, it's like you are communing with fellow human beings around a shared passion. I don't care if you're sitting next to the opposing team fan or you're surrounded by fans that are of your team. The experience is unlike anything else. And so I followed them. I was so fortunate to get to see Marcus Mariota, who is my favorite player of all time and always will be, have him start out. grow up in front of our eyes as a quarterback for the University of Oregon. And now he plays for the Tennessee Titans, and I can't wait to see him lead them to a Super Bowl, which he will. It's going to come
you go.
for next year. So anyway,
there you go. You
that's
are
my
like
duck
a
story.
Fangirl. You are a fangirl. Yeah, well, I went to a small college as well. And when my niece went to Auburn, it was a similar experience. I said, before she graduates, I want to go to an Auburn game to see SEC magic. And I want to see toilet paper on the trees when they win the game. And I would agree, it's that experience is just phenomenal. I think there's so much about life that you can relate to if you understand sports. And I know you coach leaders, and I know that you work with a lot of organizations, nonprofits, corporations, those types of things in your business. So I kind of want to go back, though, to your whitewater rafting guide in Alaska. I mean, you were a guide, right? And you're still a guide now as you're helping people write their books. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Specifically, what would you like me to share? How did I get there, or what was it like to actually be a guide?
Was there anything that you learned from that like sort of fast forward to today as you guide your clients that you think back like, oh, I did that when I was a whitewater guide in Alaska?
Yeah, great. Well, I'll tell you the story that I love to share, and it, I think, really illustrates the power of bridging experiences in our lives to where we are today. So one of my main roles as a guide was I was assigned to go down the Kenai River to a remote island at the mouth of the Kenai and set up base camp for the guests who were coming on these wilderness safaris. And these were high ticket wilderness safaris, the trip of a lifetime for guests. And so there was a lot of pressure on lowly old me, to make sure base camp was set up with the tents and the fire and all the coolers of food. And one summer, it was actually my first summer. I'd made the trip several times, and it was probably, my fourth or fifth time. So by then I knew the river and I knew what I needed to do. And I wasn't paying attention. I came around the bend in the river, and the water level had dropped just enough since the last journey I'd made that there was a gravel bar in a section of the river, and I got sucked onto it in the raft. And I was by myself. It was 8:00 at night. Nobody was around. I mean, we're in the wilderness, and nobody was going to be coming until 18 hours later. So I'm sitting there stuck on this gravel bar with the water flowing around me, thinking, this is not a good situation, because I had a critical mission to get to the island, set up the camp, and so forth. And for those listeners who've ever been rafting, you know that there are two main rules. Number one, you never let go of your oars or your paddle. In this case, I had oars. And number two, you don't get out of the raft unless you're getting out onto the land, and a gravel bar doesn't count. So I was faced with really my own mortality, because the Kenai River is very cold. It is fed by glaciers. Even in the summer, it doesn't get above 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Hypothermia is the number one cause of deaths on Alaskan rivers. And I knew that if I got out of the raft, I was taking my own life into my own hands. But I also was faced with, if I don't get down to the island, I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to embarrass my boss, and it's just not going to be good. So I had one of those God moments where I said, I think there's more in store for me, so I'm going to trust you have my back. And I looked around and I thought, well, if this is where it ends, at least it's beautiful. Right? At least it's a beautiful place. And I got out of the raft and I walked around to the back, and I pushed and I felt it lift, and I thought, I have 5 seconds to get back on this thing. And I hurled my body on top of this huge pile of gear and scrambled back. My heart was racing. I just get chills every time I tell the story. I took control of the oars again and, never missed another beat. Anyway, I tell that story because there are 3 big lessons that we can all take from that apply to anything that we do. The first one is conditions are going to change, and it's our responsibility to know what conditions have changed. In my case, I could have asked anybody, hey, have you been down the river recently? what's going on? Is there has a tree fallen? Is there anything I need to know? So it's been a couple of weeks since I made the last trip. No, I didn't do that. I just assumed I got this, right? So our egos get in the way sometimes, and then we're face to face with this potential, this gravel bar, right? The gravel bar is a metaphor. We're going to get stuck, and then we have to figure out, what am I going to do next? The second lesson is that no one's coming to rescue you, right? No one is coming to rescue you. And as women, that is an archetype from little girls of someday your prince will come, right? Or somebody's going to give you an option, or your dad is going to always take care of you. I mean, there's all these metaphors built into and conditioning. And I just say no. As a brave girl, it's up to us. And that's my third point, is we have the internal compass to guide our lives. It's up to us to learn how to use it and know where is it leading us. And so those are my three big takeaways. And in the book writing journey, it's the same. You're going to get stuck along the way. Sometimes you need a guide. Sometimes you don't. You've got something valuable to say, because Tracy, as well as I, those limiting beliefs that we put up as obstacles, those become gravel bars in our lives, where we think, well, who am I to share this story? Or who's really going to care about, what's happened to me? Well, who are you not to do that, right? I mean, like you, I get inspired when I hear other people's stories. Like you, I have faced challenges as a female, trying to be a businesswoman, being a professional, trying to navigate this giant river of life that we're all going down. And there's going to be hazards along the way. And there's going to be times when it just feels effortless, right? Where we're like, I got this. This is great. This is why I'm doing it. And then you come around and you bend and you're like, uh-oh.
Right.
Uh-oh. So.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. And I think, you're fortunate that you were, as unfortunate as it was to have that experience as the whitewater rafting guide, the fact that you sit here today and you can distill it down into those 3 lessons is really powerful, I think. And the other thing that's always impressed me about you is that your commitment to your own personal growth. And your commitment, I was looking at your website and I was like, wow, not only are you out there coaching other people about leadership, personal branding, writing, those types of topics, but you've made significant investments in yourself, right? And the fact that, you went to work with a coach and you were able to get this phenomenal increase in your revenues when you worked with a coach who helped you laser focus on what it was that was really going to tap into your gifts, right? So talk a little bit about, like, as scary as it is to make those investments, sometimes when you don't even have the money in the bank to pay for that, having that courage and that trust and that making that leap of faith that this is going to pay off. So talk to me a little bit about that, like what was going through your head.
Sure. Well, the coach that you're referring to, her name is Angelique Grewers of The Corporate Agent. And I will tell you, Tracy, I was on a gravel bar of my own professionally when I showed up in Angelique's world. And it was really interesting because everything you just described me perfectly. I didn't have the money in the bank to invest in a coach. I didn't have the belief in myself enough to think this was going to be the right decision. And yet there was a little voice that overrode all of that and said, Mary Lou, if you don't do this, you are missing out on one of the biggest opportunities of your life. And so I did take that leap. I got out of the raft and went around to the back, and I pushed myself and said, get going. Do something. It's time to up level. And it was one of the best decisions I've ever made throughout my entire different careers. Working with a coach, as you well know, changes the game. And I believe that in this day and age, in the 21st century, that we all have to work with coaches at different parts of our lives. There's you can tell the difference between the people who work with coaches and invest in themselves and the people who don't. If you go to any event, it's pretty easy to pick out in a room. Once you've been on the other side, you can start to hear the things that people talk about and the things you say, and you can find your tribe and know these people do believe in investing in themselves, and they're the kinds of people that I want to engage in conversation with because they understand. And then there's the people on the other side that make a lot of excuses or just think it's not worth, why would anybody hire a coach? I'm sure you've heard people say that.
Yes.
And again, my response is, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? Or are you just happy living a mediocre life? And if that's your case, wonderful. That's okay. Coaching really isn't for everybody at every second of the day. But I do believe that old, as a former teacher, and now as somebody that works in the personal development industry, for lack of a better term, and that really is the umbrella which we're all in, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And a teacher and a coach and a mentor, we can interchange. They play different roles, but they're all so valuable, so valuable. And it was, I look at that, I can draw a line in the sand between my decision to work with Angelique and everything up until that point. Night and day.
That's great. And then, I think, the results speak for themselves, right?
Yep.
The results speak for themselves. Yeah. And I think one of the other things I always like to ask people when I'm in conversation with them is, what's a book that you would recommend sort of in the personal growth and development space that's really impacted you? And, for you, what was that?
Again, we were talking the pre-chat. It's so hard to pick one, but for the sake of time and to honor your question, the one I want to throw out there is called Do the Work by Stephen Pressfield. And in a nutshell, his theme is basically, we can sit around and think about things all day long. We can find all kinds of excuses as to why we either don't deserve something, why something shouldn't happen, why we're not the ones to write the book, start the podcast, launch a business, leave a bad relationship, take a class, fill in the blank. At the end of the day, it's inspired and deliberate action that will make all the difference in the quality and the experience of your life. And he doesn't mince words. It's a short book. It's easy to digest. I have dog-eared it, underlined it, read it probably a dozen times. And when I do feel a need for a voice to nudge me forward, I turn to that book and just open a page and say, oh yeah, that's right, Mary Lou, do the work.
Right.
Do the work.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I think it might be Anne Lamott. That's when I was writing my second book, I hit up against a lot of resistance. As you know,
Yes.
a writer will, if you're truly at your core a writer, you have these moments where you go through, who am I to share this with the world? Who's going to care? I need to who am I? What am I thinking by doing this? And I think she talks about just get your butt in the seat and just write.
Mm-hmm. She does.
It's very much the same concept. Just it will come, it will flow through you. And so that is just so critical. One of the things I had another coach tell me was just do the next right logical thing.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we tend to go into overwhelm, as you go to different events or you listen to different advice or you're searching different things on the internet, and it's overwhelming. And so you just do nothing.
Right. You get into that analysis paralysis or the compare and despair. You look at where people are at that perhaps you admire and wonder how on earth you could ever be like them. And that's the wrong question. The right question is, what am I doing right now that's getting me to use my football metaphor, closer to my own end zone? We each play our own game. And I think the joy and the beauty is being out on the field. It doesn't matter if you're maybe you'll be the star player for a game. Maybe you won't. That's not the point. The point is you're out there, you're suited up, you're showing up, and you're giving it your best. You're going to fumble. You're going to throw an interception. You're going to get blindsided and knocked down and maybe get on injured reserve for a while. But the point is, how are you going to, the next day, are you going to get up, put on your uniform, whatever that uniform looks like for you, and focus in on what matters most to you? So we do live in a funny time where there's so much information available that it's easy to get sucked into the rabbit holes, right, of the internet and go, oh, maybe I should take that course. Oh, maybe I should learn how to do that. And as soon as I start hearing those, I stop myself and say, this is not, as wonderful and fun as that might be, that is not what those aren't your gifts, Mary Lou. Those are for other people. When you're ready, you bring them on. But that is not you don't need to go take a course on, deepening your Photoshop skills or whatever it might be. There's somebody else that can do that for us, right? Just like with the podcast, you do what you're best at, which is the conversation, prepping your guest and going out and finding great people to have conversations with. And then the technical stuff, you have a team and you utilize that team. Let them do their magic, make you sound amazing, make your guests sound amazing. And then that frees you up from that sense of overwhelm, which again, it's normal. It happens to all of us.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I find it, it is, it's, how many people have spent thousands of dollars on courses or online courses or programs that they've never even listened to the audio. They've never printed the worksheet. They've never, and they've moved on to the next thing. And I spent a lot of time doing that. And now it's, like you say, just really focus on the piece that is your gift and your talent, and bring, and to let the ego go. You don't have to do everything.
Right.
And
that takes time. That
Mhm.
takes time to get to that point. And again, your listeners will vary, but if there is anybody listening, just trust that trust the process. If you let go of one thing that is stealing from your gift, that's a win, rather than try to go overhaul everything. Just think about, is there one thing that you're doing that is taking away from the gift, the strength, the magic that you bring to the table, and start with one thing. And then maybe in a month or 2 or 6, another thing goes away. It's just, we're always fine tuning, right? Always adjusting, figuring out what's working and what's not, and then adjusting from there.
Correct. Yeah, I would agree with you. And even from a sales perspective, as you go out and you talk to customers, just pick one marketing tool. You don't need, or one business development tool. You don't need 37. Talk to people. You don't even need to have a website to talk to people.
No, you don't.
And so many people, I think it was Denise Duffield Thomas said, she put a post out on Facebook or Instagram. She says, well, today I spent the day procrastinating.
That's cute. I like that.
I did too. I thought that was brilliant. You can find every reason to procrastinate, because that's another, thing that can happen is, well, I'll just put it off and kick the can. So, right?
Right. Yes.
But I think a lot of it comes back to your mindset and your belief system. And, is there any kind of tip there that, has really served you well?
Around mindset, it's developing the awareness of the narratives that we carry in our heads, and we all have them. And my tip is, how is that serving you? How is that narrative that keeps playing in your head serving you? Because it is, in some way. It's either serving you because it's moving you forward, or it's serving you because you're afraid to move forward. It just comes down to that. It's black and white in that sense. And again, as women, we adopt certain stories. We face certain obstacles that are different from men, just as men have certain stories and face certain obstacles that are different for them. And I think part of the evolution of the individual involves developing that awareness of, oh, why, first of all, recognizing that the story is there, figuring out why is it showing up right now? What do I need to learn from this? And how do I move on? And going back to Anne Lamott, she talks about that in her book, Bird by Bird, which is a fabulous book. I'm sneaking in a second one, but she talks about it in the writing context, but I think it fits for everybody. Is what she talks about is when the critics in her head start showing up and putting her down. Who are you, Anne, to write this? Oh, this is a terrible essay, or you'll never amount to anything. She visualizes these mason jars, and she sticks these people in those mason jars and closes the lids, and then goes and puts them in, again, her imaginary cabinet, and shuts the door so she can't hear them anymore. And I think we all have to do that, no matter what we're doing. The critics are going to show up, the naysayers are going to show up, and a lot of times it's us. It's nobody. When was the last time you looked out your window and you saw a bunch of people with bullhorns saying, "You suck, don't do it, you'll never amount to anything"? It's just, we do that to ourselves more times than not. So my tip would be, learn to recognize it, ask yourself, why is it here? And then get those jars and stick those voices in, close the lid, and shut them in a closet and move on. And oftentimes it passes, and then you're like, oh, okay, here I am. This is great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have one of my other coaching friends, Marianne Singer. She always says, give them a different job. Give your inner critic a different job. They need a new assignment.
Right.
And she said, once you give them a new assignment, but she says the same thing, that a lot of times our biggest obstacle is ourselves.
Yep.
So, well, this has been really, really great. I do have a finale question, and that is, Mary Lou, what is the bravest move you've ever made? And there are no wrong answers.
I know. And I know you can edit out this lead into my answer. I think the bravest move I ever made was deciding that my marriage was no longer working, and that in order for me to live my fullest life, I had to leave. And that's really hard for me to say, but when I look at my life before and after, I realize that the growth and the expansion that has happened could not have happened any other way.
Thank you for sharing, and thank you for being vulnerable and allowing yourself to be vulnerable. But I think there are a lot of women out there that are in situations that they're very similar. And I think that what you've just shared gives them hope and hopefully courage to do what they need to do, to know that there's something on the other side, and that they're willing to go through the forest, the very dark forest, to get to the beautiful scene. And, I look at your growth, and I look at where you were when I met you and where you are now. And you're amazing. You're doing wonderful things in the world. You're helping so many people through your gifts as a teacher, a writer, a coach. And so I salute you for making that brave decision.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to share my story, Tracy, and I really admire this work that you're doing, talking about brave girls and courage and vulnerability and all the things that the conversation continues. And it's been my complete honor.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Brave Girls with Tracy Imm as much as I did creating it. Each show is produced with you, the listener, in mind, as you look for inspiration and motivation from other brave souls as you pursue your desires. I'd love to hear your feedback, so please leave me a review on iTunes. I read every one. And check out my website, tracyimm.com, for more free resources. You can also join my list and sign up for my newsletter right from the homepage. Until next time, stay strong, believe in your dreams, and go do something brave.
We appreciate you joining us for this episode of Brave Girls with Tracy Imm and hope that you enjoyed the show. For more information about today's episode, as well as additional free resources to help you achieve greatness in your life, visit tracyimm.com and sign up for our mailing list. Until next time, dream big, believe in yourself, and let your brilliance shine as only you can do.